Hey everybody, welcome back to homerecordingmadeeasy.com, learningtomix.com, and here on my YouTube channel. And this time out, we're going to take a look at the first plugin of what's going to become a mini series here of the Tony Maserati all-in-one kind of plugins, the Signature Series packed by Waves. These plugins are great. These plugins allow you to, with little or no real engineering experience, to really understand compression and EQ, kind of throw these plugins on your tracks, turn a couple of dials, and get them sounding good. And this is the first plugin that you see on the screen here. This is the Groups plugin. We're going to look at 5 or 6 of these plugins over the next several videos, but this time out, we're going to take a look at the Groups. We're going to listen to it on a master bus. We're going to listen to it on a drum bus, and also on, I believe, an organ bus. And we're just going to kind of show you how it works and show you how easy they are to use with not a lot of experience, as I said. So before we get to that, if you like what you see in this video, please hit that subscribe button below. Also go out to facebook.com/homerecordingmadeeasy and follow me there. And for more tips, tricks, concepts, and training around all aspects of home recording, mixing, and mastering, be sure, go back to homerecordingmadeeasy.com. Check out the Made Easy series, as well as the Quick Mix series. They will absolutely help you make better productions, mixes, and masters in your home studio. I promise, and they're super, super affordable. And last but certainly not least, if you want to join a community of like-minded mixing engineers and recording musicians to help get better at the craft of mixing, check out learningtomix.com. Check out what I have going on over there with my good buddy and colleague Pete Woj from mixbettermouth.com, learningtomix.com. You'll love it. I guarantee it. So now let's head on into Studio One and let's take a look at this plugin here. So the Signature series that they do by Waves, they have a few of them. They have the Tony Maserati series, as we're looking at here. They also have the Chris Lord Algae series, which I've done a bunch of videos on in the past. You can search my YouTube archive. What I like about these plugins is, as I said in the intro, they're simple to use. They're easily laid out. They're very musical, and you don't need to know from an engineering perspective really anything about compression or EQ as far as fundamental frequencies go. You just want to throw these tracks on your or throw these plugins on your tracks, and you want to quickly be able to dial something in that gives you a very, very good starting point that you can either later add some additional plugins to do some additional processing, or B, if you're just a musician or you're just writing demos or something and you don't want a full-on production, but you just want the tracks to sound really good and passable, so you can share sessions with other musicians and colleagues or whatever. These are great because, again, you don't need to be an audio engineer to use them. So that's what makes them really, really good. And I have a lot of students that are in that boat that are just home recording musicians that just want to record their tracks and they just want them to sound good. They don't want to become real in down. They don't want to do deep dives into audio engineering. These plugins are great for that. So this, as I said, is the Groups plugin. And what this plugin is intended to do is to put them on, as the name suggests, groups, meaning either buses where you have multiple instruments going to a single bus, like say drums, all your drums going to a drum bus, or all of your tracks or all of your buses going to the master output of your DAW, which is what we're looking at right here. So let me show you the layout of how this works, and we'll listen to some sound examples. So this is on my master bus. Now, the only plugins that I have on this entire mix, this is a non-mixed song, and I do this purposely because I want you to hear them in its most really rawest form so you can really audibly hear the difference in the plugin. But the only plugins I have outside of the Maserati all-in-one plugins is I have the very first plugin in my chain is the Waves NLS, the non-linear summing, which gives me a little bit of SSL console emulation, but it's very, very subtle. No other EQ, no other compression is going on here, no other reverbs or delays. Everything is coming from the all-in-one Maserati plugins across all the different tracks, which we're going to look at in several videos. Okay, so just keep that in mind. So let's look from left to right and how this plugin is laid out. So in the top left-hand corner here, you'll see we have a sensitivity button, or this is in the input stage, the input sensitivity. The more you push the sensitivity clockwise, the more signal you're pushing into the plugin. And right to its immediate left, you have an LED, and we'll take a look at this in a second in its real-world use, where we want this plugin, we want to push the sensitivity enough so this plugin lights up like a yellowish color. Okay, that's kind of the optimal starting point for this plugin according to the manual. So you're going to see go from green to yellow to red. Red obviously is clipping. We don't want to do that. Green is okay, but you're really not getting the most out of the plugin because you're not pushing enough signal into it. We want to set the sensitivity so it's kind of lighting up a greenish green, and then on its maybe heaviest parts or its most dynamic parts lighting up yellow. Okay, so that's how the sensitivity works, and that's the same on every one of the plugins in this artist pack. Down beneath that, we have lows, mids, and highs, which is our 3-band EQ. You don't need to know about the frequencies or the curves. You just need to know you have bass, middle, treble. Really simple, right? And even in the manual, they don't specify what frequency ranges that these cover. So we're going to take a listen to that as well. Then right next to that, we have our compressor dial. Again, because this is on the master bus and this is on the groups plugin, according to the manual, the compression is set very, very subtly. So the more you turn this clockwise, the more compression you're going to get. We're going to hear the volume drop in volume because a compressor does what? It squishes the peaks and it brings up the low parts and kind of makes them more even. But it's done in a real subtle way. So as we push more compression, the peaks are going to get squished. So the volume's going to drop. And then we're going to use what's on the top right above that, above the compress, the output, to turn up the output to make up for any volume reduction we get with the compressor. Okay. And again, you don't need to know about threshold and attack and release and all that stuff. All you need to know is that it's just all done underneath the hood. Underneath that, we have our series of buttons here, which allows us to pick the source material. So this groups plugin can be used on a variety of different things. As you can see on the far right, we're on the master because it's on the master bus, but we also have one for background vocals, for keys, for strings, for guitars, for drums program, meaning like MIDI drums, and in Drums Live like a live drum kit. And what happens is, depending on what group and what your source material is with these buttons, will then also change under the hood the EQ curves for the low, mids, and highs, and also I'm sure the compression settings as well. So you don't need to know any of that stuff. It's all done for you. So because this is on the master bus, we've chose master. Up here we have a toggle switch so we can view what's being metered here. We have the output, which will end up in the display here, or if we want to flip it up to input, it'll give us a display or a readout here on this nice cool little meter of the input signal. So we're going to just start with output. So why don't we just take a quick listen back to this little loop of music, and you'll see how I kind of have everything set, and then we'll kind of turn some dials and we'll see what we have. And then what I'll do is, halfway through this loop, I will bypass the plugin, which is up here in the top left hand corner. When it's amber, it is bypassed. When it is grayed out, it is active. So you can kind of hear what it does. Now you should be listening to this tutorial on either a good set of studio monitors or a good set of headphones, because as I said a few seconds ago, these settings are kind of subtle. What I love about these plugins is that they're musical. They're not really hyped. So if you're listening to this on a cheap set of earbuds or on a laptop or on just a smartphone without good headphones, you may not hear some of the subtle differences. So keep that in mind. So let's take a listen, and then I'll bypass this halfway through. Okay, here we go. That's bypassed. Bypass. Bring some bass in. Okay, so what you should hear, we're playing your drums, bass, and organ here for this one. We're not going to do the vocals because for copyright reasons, I don't want to get this video flagged. But what you can hear is, hopefully, again, if you're listening to this on a good system, and in a very subtle way, you hear the organ become a little more present, the snare and the kick get a little bit more punchy, and the bass gets a little bit more thicker on the bottom end, and that has a lot to do with the compression. Remember, this is on the master bus, but it's subtle. So now let's work with the sensitivity, and let me show you what that means. So if we start all the way at the bottom, okay, and then we start to turn this up, you'll see the LED here. You see when it starts to flash red, probably going a little too heavy on that. You got to use your ears. We're going to back it off a little bit so it's in the green-yellow area. Okay, so you can hear as I bypass the plugin in and out, the volume doesn't change, and that's because I turned down the output to match the increase in sensitivity or increase in the input signal. And that's what you always want to try to do. You want to try to level match the plugin, which means when it's bypassed and when it's on, the volume should be very, very close to the same. You don't want one to be way louder than the other because it's going to kind of trick your ears into believing that louder sounds better. And we want to take volume out of the equation so we can focus on tone. Okay. So now that we've set the sensitivity and we have our output set, let's start playing with the EQ and let's see what this does. And again, especially on the lows, this is going to be very subtle and you won't hear this on cheap earbuds or cheap speakers. So we even turned all the way up. You can hear the kick get a little thumpier and the bass get a little thicker, as it probably should, right? We're in the low frequencies, but it doesn't get very muddy or way too boomy. It's still very musical, which is not common with a lot of plugins. Oops. So on the mids, especially on the master out, I always like to cut out a little bit of mids just to get rid of some of that cloud, some of that nasally and that boxy sound, to kind of clean up things a little bit. So that's what the mids are really good for. And as you can see, as I crank it up, it gets pretty nasty. So even on the highs, when you turn it all the way up, it doesn't get very shrilly. Again, it's very musical. So that's kind of setting the lows and the mids and the highs. And let's check out the compression. So I'm going to turn down the compression all the way. And as I start to turn it up, you're going to hear the signal get quieter, as I talked about earlier. Excuse me, it's the opposite way. It's going to get louder because it's also compensating for the makeup gain. So it's going to do that. Okay. So if we're turning up more compression, we're going to turn down our output again to kind of level match the plugin. It's probably a little bit too much compression. Now even though you have a very big sweep in this, it even says in the manual that the compression is going to be fairly subtle because Tony Maserati, like a lot of engineers, including myself, don't do a ton of compression on the master out or on buses. We try to do things in a very controlled way just to kind of catch the peak. So I'm exaggerating this quite a bit, and you could hear how things start to get a little bit broken up and a little bit distorted, a little bit too thumpy as I turn this up, and then I have to turn down the output to compensate for that makeup gain that the compression is giving us under the hood. It sounds like a pretty good compression setting to me. Again, it just kind of glues it together and everything gets to get a little bit more present sounding. It just sounds a little bit more glued. Now, just keep in mind that this meter here has nothing to do with the compressor. This is not a gain reduction meter. This is just metering the output right now. Or if I were to turn it up, flip it up, it'll meter the input. Okay, so keep that in mind. This compression dial has nothing to do with what's going on as far as gain reduction is concerned. So you just have to use your ears, which is what you should be doing anyway. Now, if you're new and you're not really used to hearing compression, what I would suggest you do is do this in a very subtle way. You're better under compressing than over compressing, okay? So you don't want to get too crazy. You probably want to keep this thing below the 12 noon spot. And as you turn it up, you just want to ask yourself, does it sound better or does it sound worse? The one thing you have to be careful of with compression, especially if you're new and you don't really know how to effectively use compression because you're not really into that, totally fine, do this sparingly. Okay, so that's how we kind of set it on the master bus. And then I also forgot to mention that you can also play around with some presets. If you click the load button, you can also go in and they have some pretty good presets you can kind of play around with to see what the settings do when you switch from preset to preset. Okay, so that's kind of on the master bus. That's what we kind of have. So now if we just take a look at this, maybe let's say on the drum bus, just so we could take a look at drums. So if we were to mute our bass and our organs here, okay, so here we're listening to just drums. Now I happen to know that these are program drums, so I put the program drums as my source, as my selector, and then again, same as last time, I'm setting the sensitivity so we're in that kind of amber area or yellow area. And it's going to go between green and yellow, and that's fine. Let's play around with the EQ. Booming. Okay, so just like on the master out, I like to cut a little bit of the mids on drums, especially because right around that mid range is where those toms and that will start to, and the overheads will start to sound really boxy and kind of woofy. So that gets rid of some of that. Again, a little bit of lows, get a little bit more kick, and a little bit of highs to bring in a little bit more of the cymbal. Again, you'd be doing this in the context of your mix, but this is just for demonstration purposes. Now let's take a listen to this compressor. Again, you can see I have it set pretty low, so I want to do things sparingly, but if we turn it up and turn down the output, let's see what we get. You're going to hear more of the overheads and more of the cymbals. Now you can hear it kind of pumping and breathing a little too much. There's no compression. Before the plugin. So when I bring the plugin in, you can hear how now you can start to hear the overheads more and more of the entire kit because we're compressing it, and what it's doing, it's bringing out the air and the space kind of around the drum kit. But again, doing it in a very sparing way. So again, it's a very musical plugin that just kind of gets everything just to sound a little bit better. Now, if you have really good source material, really good well-recorded tracks, it's going to make this plugin shine even more. If you have poorly recorded tracks, it's not going to fix poorly recorded tracks. It's going to make those poorly recorded tracks even sound more and enhance the imperfections in that recording. So again, pick your source, dialing your EQ, make sure your sensitivity is set so you're in that green on the heavier hits into yellow to kind of optimize the input signal going into the plugin. Adjust your compressor. Again, keep it subtle. I would keep it before 12 noon. You can experiment with that and then adjust your output so before and after the plugin, you're right around the same volume level. And again, you can always play with some presets. So that is our look at the Tony Maserati Groups plugin. Again, you should experiment with this on guitars, strings, keys. We're not going to do all of that in this video, but this gives you an overview of how this plugin kind of works. You can always go out to the Waves website. You can download this and demo it, I think, for 14 days. And throughout certain times of the year, you can get these plugins really inexpensively on sale. The whole 5 plugin series the whole Signature series. I believe I paid $69 US for on sale. So that's a great deal. I don't know if you could buy them individually. I think you can for probably 29 bucks, but to get 5 plugins for 70 US dollars, that's a hell of a deal. And they sound great. So I hope you enjoyed this video taking a look at the Groups plugin by Tony Maserati and Waves. Come on back for the next video where we're going to take a look at the bass, we're going to take a look at the guitar plugin, the keyboard plugin, we're going to take a look at some other stuff, the vocal plugin later as well, so you can kind of hear all these plugins in action and see for yourself if you want to go and check them out. So I've been Dave with Home Recording Made Easy and LearningToMix.com. Please hit that subscribe button, share this video on your other social media pages. It would really, really help me out. I really do appreciate it. And again, go to homerecordingmadeeasy.com, check out all my training content I have there. And if you really want to dive deep into the craft of mixing, go to learningtomix.com. You will find no better user community of learning the craft of mixing. It's a great place to be, and we're growing by leaps and bounds, and I urge you to go check out learningtomix.com. So I will see you guys in the next video. Take care.